Invite the deputations and officials to come in. We've already formed a quorum.
另一個方法就係
讀團體名，
團體名，團體易讀啲，因為姓就好難讀嘅。
對佢講英文嗰度嘅。
係啊，但係我哋有翻譯㗎嘛。係咯，即係你話可以，但係當然你話即係團體名就易讀啦，有英文，但係啲姓就唔係英文嚟嗰啲，咁睇下主席你覺得可以。OK。讀
團體啦，團體易啲。
團體名易啲，除咗呢兩個話俾你知，呢啲因為個人代表咁就冇辦法啦。
係。我哋夠人開會啦，而家請緊啲。
We've already formed a quorum. We're now inviting the deputations and individuals to come in. The officials have already come in. Today's subject is mainly about ethnic minorities in relation to employment and integration into the community. I'll invite the officials to brief us on the subject first. I'd like them to be as concise as possible. Do the deputations have the paper? Well, they can find it on our website. So I'll ask the officials to highlight the salient points to us, and then the deputations will speak and we can have an official reply. We welcome the deputations who are concerned with ethnic minorities. Thank you for attending. We're pleased to have your views. We welcome the government officials and the 28 deputations and individuals to this meeting. Through this meeting, we'd like to listen to the government's views on employment and integration into the community in relation to ethnic minorities. Of course, we'd also like to listen to the deputations and individuals. We'd like to have their views. May I remind you that your remarks are not protected by the Electoral Powers and Privileges Ordinance. So when you speak, please take note of that. Secondly, in front of you, you have a button for choosing channels. Channel 0 Floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, and Channel 3 Putonghua. So in accordance with your need, you can decide which channel to choose. We'll have 3 parts in this meeting. For the first part, the officials will introduce the policies about 5 minutes, and then I'll give 3 minutes each to the deputations, and then government's response. Then members will ask questions. May I first invite the administration to brief us on the policies? About 5 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps we should say something about employment first. We're from the Labour Department. We're very concerned about the employment needs of the ethnic minorities. We're dedicated to the provision of comprehensive and diversified services to them to assist them in finding jobs and to get integrated into society. The ethnic minorities can make use of a lot of free services and facilities. I won't repeat the contents of the paper. In particular, we have certain services for them. For example, our centers have an information corner to provide all sorts of information on employment. We have a dedicated counter to provide placement referrals. And then we arrange employment talks for them so as to update them on the latest job market as well as to teach them interview skills. There are also individualized services such that they can meet with our advisors and counselors in the placement centers so as to provide them with job-seeking views, information, as well as community information. Starting from 2003, we had enhanced measures to assist the ethnic minorities in employment. We tried to find vacancies for them and organize dedicated recruitment seminars for them. Upcoming are 2 major recruitment seminars and 9 district seminars. We also enhance publicity and promotion to encourage them to make use of our services. Through the Home Affairs Department, we have subvented broadcasting in the languages of the ethnic minorities. We also place advertisements in newspapers and make use of the PCRO's community network of the police to publicize our services and recruitment activities. We'll closely monitor the needs of the ethnic minorities, the EMs, such that they can make use of our services. I'll now defer to my colleagues for retraining services. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll brief members on the services of the Employees Retraining Board. This is to assist the ethnic minorities in their skill upgrading. There are dedicated English courses for them. And then in 2014-15, we have about 30 dedicated programs covering a lot of industries: property management, security guards, beauty services, catering, and so forth. In 2014-15, 800 training quotas have been reserved for ethnic minorities. The ERB also keeps in contact with the ethnic minorities, welfare organizations, as well as other stakeholders, so as to closely monitor the retraining needs of the ethnic minorities. So much for my presentation. Ms. Fu? Mr. Chairman, concerning the Home Affairs Department, we mainly provide services through NGOs and community organizations, as well as our district networks, to provide support to the ethnic minorities in the hope that they can get integrated into society as soon as possible. Now, we have a number of services at the moment. First, we have placement support centers for ethnic minorities. We have 5 such centers and 2 sub-centers, providing activities and services to the ethnic minorities. One of the centers is also a support service center to provide translation and interpretation services. And then we have a community-based social integration project. At the district level, through all sorts of adaptation programs, we'd like to assist our ethnic minority friends to integrate into society. We also have a number of projects organized by ethnic minorities themselves so that they can assist their peers with similar background and experience to accompany their peers in introducing government services to their peers, and when necessary, do referrals. As for the other services, they're already set out in the paper. I won't repeat them. In the next year, we'll have new services. In Kwaiting, we have support service centers for the ethnic minorities, and then in all centers, there will be dedicated groups for youths. Now it's the turn of the deputations to add their views. First, ethnic diocese of the Hong Kong Diocesan Pastoral Center for Workers. Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're in Yau Ma Tei, serving the ethnic minorities for 5 years. Well, just now the officials said a lot, but they did nothing. Now we have the ethnic minorities here to listen to this meeting, but then they don't have interpretation in their own languages, so they don't know what we are talking about. Concerning poverty alleviation is essential to employment. For the Labor Department in 2010, 8.5%, and then dropping to 7.9%, and then to 6.2% in 2011 and 2012. The matching rates have been very low. There are very few comers as well as users. For those 3 years, only 140 telephone interpretation and 18 simultaneous interpretation services have been used. Therefore, there's only a placement counter with a Chinese manning an ordinary counter to serve them. So you cannot actually join the ethnic minorities. Still, Mr. Matthew Chung has no intention to set up a placement division for ethnic minorities. And then $150 per day for training programs is really too little. They cannot support their families at the same time when they're being trained. They'll go out of job, and then many South Asians are in the construction industry. Apart from metal scaffolding, there are no other courses in English for them. Well, that's in English. Well, you want all ethnic minorities to enroll in the same program. But how can you ask 10 to 20 South Asian families to send somebody for training? What about their livelihood? And then they don't speak Cantonese sometimes. So how can you assist them in getting rid of poverty?
So our organization thinks that the Welfare and Labor Bureau should do more when it comes to EM employment, and also the accountability should be enhanced when it comes to EM equality. Yes, thank you. The next speaker will be Ms. Annie Lee from Hong Kong Unison Limited.
Held a seminar titled Democracy and Minority Rights for Ethnic Minorities in Hong Kong. And one of the ethnic minority tertiary students actually told us that because they have faced segregation in school since kindergarten to secondary school, they can't really have a strong sense of belonging to Hong Kong. And what I'm driving at is to promote integration into society at large. We have to start integration at school from kindergarten. And I think it's disappointing that today we discuss integration, but Education Bureau representatives are not here. Also, in the recent round of questions submitted by the legislative councillors to the government about the budget, there's a question about the proportion of students in each school being ethnic minorities, and the government refused to give the data on the basis that the goal of the education policy is to promote integration. That is, frankly speaking, that's nonsense. It's just like saying that because you want to be healthy, you don't do body checks. So also, according to the United Nations Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, data about education should be provided disaggregated based on various grounds of discrimination. So that will include race discrimination. So the government actually has a duty to provide data disaggregated by race. And I myself and an Indian client of ours are going to the UN to lobby the committee in 2 weeks' time, and will raise this issue to the committee. So we hope the government would provide such information. So secondly, the government does not seem to treat ethnic minorities as Hong Kongers, because in many of its documents, it's referring to non-Chinese speaking students and the local counterparts. So what they're saying is that non-Chinese speaking students are not local. I think it's really disappointing that the Hong Kong government is trying to distinguish who is a Hong Konger based on ethnicity. And in this mini movie for the population policy consultation, the government is also treating ethnic minorities as imported workers, which is wrong and fundamentally challenging the government policy for integration. Thank you.
OK， 唔該。香港社會服務聯會羅小姐。
Thank you. Next, the Hong Kong Council of Social Service, Ms. Lin Law. Well, we have 26 social service organizations under us, and we always discuss EM issues. We know that Hong Kong has over 450,000 EMs, and they make a lot of contributions to Hong Kong's economy. and many of them are South Asians. They should also enjoy the same rights as local people. Last year, we conducted a study on the poverty issues of South Asians. And over 1/3 of the South Asian children in Hong Kong are living under the poverty line, and about half of the Pakistani families are also living under the poverty line. So we can see that for the South Asian Hong Kong residents, their poverty problem is more serious than other people in Hong Kong. So we hope that we can give them more help. Because when we look at Hong Kong's integration policy, it's very segregated, and there's a lack of publicity, resources, and monitoring. We hope that the government can have a comprehensive integration policy so that the integration goals can be achieved strategically. We hope that the government can review its present policies, and EM groups as well as NGOs can take part in the formulation of such policies. Just now, some other colleagues have talked about this. That is, in the government's paper, it has mentioned the number of EM population in Hong Kong is over 450,000, and many of them are domestic helpers. It seems that the government treats them as foreigners, and they are not entitled to Hong Kong welfare. But we have not addressed the issue that many of the South Asians are actually Hong Kong people. They should enjoy the rights to education, to information, etc. They are very unfamiliar with Hong Kong situation, and they do not have access to information. One great barrier is language. We think there is a need for optimizing the translation and interpretation services. In particular, when it comes to on-site interpretation, there is a serious shortage. In overseas studies, it is discovered that there is a 65% need for on-site interpretation and 35% need for telephone interpretation. This is more ideal. As for the HAD's interpretation service, mainly is on telephone. As for government departments, there is also a very low percentage of providing this kind of service.
Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Wisniewski-Otero. I'm the Advocacy Officer at Justice Center Hong Kong, formerly Hong Kong Refugee Advice Center. Today, I would like to emphasize that refugees and other people seeking protection are some of the most marginalized of ethnic minority communities in this city. They arrive in Hong Kong having been forced to flee from unspeakable human rights abuses in their home countries. With the unified screening mechanism now in place since March, the Hong Kong government is going to have to get serious about long-term solutions for successful claimants in this new system. Poverty and legal limbo are not long-term solutions. While protection claimants are awaiting a decision on their claim, a process that can take up to many years, they are forced to rely on a meager humanitarian assistance. Even recent enhancements to the package still put recipients below the poverty line. The Hong Kong government often emphasizes that employment is the best route out of poverty. Yet, unlike other vulnerable groups, protection claimants are legally barred from working. While discretionary, temporary permission to work can be given, it is hardly ever granted by the Director of Immigration. We are only aware of a handful of cases. This policy is inhumane. The government is forcing people into avoidable deprivation and putting them into an impossible situation. Either the humanitarian assistance provided to protection claimants has to be livable, or protection claimants must be able to earn their own living. The vast majority are of working age. If given a choice, they would prefer to be self-reliant rather than to be forced into dependence for which they are often unfairly portrayed. Many were professionals in their home countries and have skills to offer. As a bare minimum, the government should allow mandated refugees and substantiated torture claimants to work. These are people with proven claims. We remind the government that we are talking about a small subset of an already very small number of people. It is clear that there is a labor demand in Hong Kong, given that for many sectors there is a very real manpower shortage. Much discussion has been dedicated to how to resolve this problem. What the government must realize is that work is much more than about livelihoods. It is about dignity, a sense of purpose in life, a way to interact positively in the community, and a way to contribute back to society. The status quo is unsustainable. Going forward, the Subcommittee on Poverty must make sure to include protection claimants' needs in these discussions. Thank you.
Okay. Hong Kong Catholic Commission for Labor Affairs.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Abbas Saira, and I am working for this agency from last several years, and I witnessed the sufferings of the EMs. The first point is that for the present generation, although most of them were born in Hong Kong and some of them are living here from generation to generation, but still they are considered foreigners with completely different policies in each and every government department from local Chinese origin. From immigration department to many other public services, they are having different policies. For many years, EMs cannot approach the public services as other local people can. Of course, I understand that the language is the biggest barrier for that. Until last few years, the Home Affairs Bureau funded several centers to provide social service for EM and a specialized center interpretation service to EMs who face language difficulty. But the government did not make any clear instructions to frontline officers in all public departments to provide interpretation service to EMs actively. So our client experience is that interpretation service is there, but the frontline officers are not willing to use the interpretation service actively. In our daily operation, I can give you many examples and experience that we come across when the people suffered and no one helped them. First of all, I want to speak about housing department. They are not providing any support to those EMs who cannot communicate in English and Chinese. Some of them even miss the chance for house offer, and even some of their application is cancelled due to not understanding very well during the interview. Some of them sign the documents which they don't understand properly, and the housing department never tried to arrange interpretation service them to make them understand exactly that what they are going to sign. Then I just want to talk to you about Student Finance Assistance Agency. We experienced that many of EM even don't know that there is such kind of agency which can help them. In our research, even some of them know about that. They think that the process is quite complicated and the requirements are so difficult to fulfill. So they mostly don't apply, and the thing is that even there is not enough promotion of these schemes in different languages, and also mostly the schools also don't provide any kind of support. Then finally, I want to describe about Labor Department, the impression on the usefulness of Labor Department among EM community, especially in seeking jobs through Labor Department, is quite worse. Mostly they don't trust on Labor Department in looking for jobs.
Okay, thank you. Representative from AIM groups.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Aman Nawaz, representing AIM group. I want to tell you about my own experience. I always find the job my own network. Labor Department cannot help at all. I am living more than 50 years in Hong Kong. When British rule was ruling that time, Labor Department was very helpful, helpful. They provide interpreter. In the past 3 years for EM, the job matching rate is very low, only 6.2%, and only 140 telephone and 18 face-to-face translation is provided, which is very low. And all people over 65 cannot find the job. I want to government to help and keep consider of my request and our problem. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Equal access to government services concerned group for Hong Kong ethnic minority.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Ms. Sujata Tamang. Today I am here to represent Equal Access to Government Concerned Group. I'm the only one who can speak simple English. That's why I'm here to represent. Actually, we requested interpretation service, but your administrative reject us. The language is the biggest barrier for ethnic minority to approach different public services. English and Chinese are official languages of Hong Kong, and mainly the services given in these two languages. For minorities, we have that thought that if they don't know Chinese, they must know English to communicate to their officials. But the fact is that English is not the mother tongue of most of the ethnic minorities. In their countries, English is taught like a subject, same as Hong Kong. So therefore, their understanding of English may even much more poor than local. According to our experience, most of the minorities are not much educated. So they always have difficulties in approaching public services. Nowadays, Home Affairs Department giving funding to 4 centers to provide interpretation services. But the point is that why the front-end officials are not following the guidance to provide a smooth approach to public services for ethnic minority by providing them translations. First of all, I want to describe about the housing department, which claim to provide very good services, but actually they are not providing any support for ethnic minorities who cannot speak Chinese and English. Then I will talk about the Student Financial Assistance Agency, which is to help the low-income families to ease the financial burden and to encourage the students to higher studies. We experienced that many of the ethnic minority even don't know that there is such agency which can help them. Why? And finally, I will describe about the Labor Department and their employment services. The impressions of Labor Department in seeking job among ethnic minorities is quite worse. Other than above all situations, these poverty commissions did not speak a single word about EM needs and their difficulties. According to our experience, the situation is very worse in comparison to Chinese. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Representative from Hidden Women Art Craft Studio.
Next, Hidden Women Art Craft Studio.
In Pakistan, I completed my education in Pakistan. Today I am present in the EM group, Hidden Women Art Craft Group, and I want to talk EM women employment rate. It's 12.4%. It's very low because we don't have enough opportunities to do the job where we can follow our culture and maintain our religions. That's why we can't get any jobs in Hong Kong, because that I have my own experience. I have a good qualification in Pakistan. I done Bachelor of Art degree, but I work as a assistant or as a helper in a salon because they think that we don't know Chinese. And my salary was 7,000. It's so less and it's so embarrassing for me because my qualification didn't match with my job level. So that's why we face so many difficulties in Hong Kong to find out the job. Not only language, when we go for interview, they will say, do you know Chinese? If we say no Chinese, they will say, oh, do you have an experience? If we say no experience, they will say, oh, why you are wearing this scarf? They will talk about culture as well. So in the end, they will say to us, you don't have experience, you don't know Chinese, so you don't have job for you. So it's really like so hard to find out the job for the women in Hong Kong. I really want that government do something about and give us the chance that we go, and without they give us the chance, we can't get any experience. So I really want government see them and give us the chance to do the jobs and follow our culture and follow our religions. Thank you.
Thank you. 徐新鴻議員 香港聖公會麥理浩夫人中心。
Next, Hong Kong Shen Kung Hui Lady MacLeod Center. Mr. Chan. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just now, I listened to the EM friends as well as the Labour Department. I was really saddened. The Labour Department has organized job fairs for EMs. However, how do they operate in reality? Let me tell you what my colleagues told me. Very often, those job fairs only provide 1 or 2 jobs. I did liaise with my colleagues. I would like to fetch some South Asian friends to join me to those fairs. I asked for why so few jobs. They said they just want to scan and screen those jobs with the proper qualifications. So they only got a couple of jobs in those job fairs. And then I said, can I help by fetching some interested employers? Otherwise, you only place advertisements, sort them out before inviting the employers to come. Yes, we often receive slips from the Labour Department about job fairs, but in fact, those job fairs were just like what I described. There's another disappointing aspect. Many departments, including the Home Affairs Department, have provided some services. We ask why they don't have one single South Asian colleague, that is officer. As a result, they told us that very few South Asians sought jobs from them. Well, this is a question of chicken or egg first. If you don't have an EM officer there, the EMs won't go. The unemployment rate of the EMs is very high, and the employment rates are very low. That has something to do with the Labour Department. Now, for 26 job types, there will be streamlining of the procedures. Do the EMs know of this? They actually don't know. So I think councillors should urge the Labour Department to do something on this. Can they employ, say, a South Asian officer? Can they talk to employers to see what jobs can suit the EMs rather than sitting back and wait for jobs to come for the EMs? Yes, the government has been doing something good in terms of the funds. But for these funds, we always have 4 to 8P households. So if you set up a fund only to serve 3P families or 4P families, that won't really be helpful to the South Asians. So I think the government should consider appealing to government departments to review their language needs, because at the moment they do have a language examination for South Asians for entry exams. Is it really necessary for them to know how to read and write Chinese? I think the government should review that requirement so that more South Asians can be recruited. Next, Khatma Nabuwat Movement, Hong Kong.
I think 3 minutes is really not enough, even name problems of ethnic minorities. Basically, it is not deniable that government has been doing and also doing for ethnic minorities, and we also share and enjoy some places equal rights like hospital. But I think there are a lot of other things ethnic minorities need government attention. For example, like I am from Pakistan, we have basic education of Quran and prayers for the children, and we are always doing it on our self-help basis. So there are some government states where it is impossible to find a place where we can educate these children, and we cannot send them too far away in order to avoid accidents. Number 2, the housing is also a big problem for ethnic minority. At present moment, everything, the rents are risen very much, and as in ethnic minorities, usually the breadwinners are only one or two, so they cannot cope with the situation. If they pay the rent, they cannot eat well. They cannot educate their children well. So the government and especially housing department should have should make a program for ethnic minorities with difficulties to have a special arrangement for them. And also, I think beside this, there should be special arranged programs for the ethnic minorities teenagers who left behind in the school, who left the school about 13 years to 15 years or before 18 years, because these children cannot go to school, continue their studies, and they can also not work in many, according to the labor law. So these people are hanging around with the people who just misuse them. So there should be some programs which is especially arranged for these youngsters to be trained, and then tomorrow they can help in the society as a useful contributor. And also, I think the language barrier for ethnic minorities, there should, I think, should be also dealt with. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. Cái đó cao là hàng mũi đại biểu.
Next, Christian Action. Oh, they haven't come. India Association then.
Afternoon. My name is Kavi Kitani and I represent the India Association of Hong Kong. Now, I've been listening to my peers speak about some issues to support ethnic minorities in relation to employment and integration into community. And the general consensus is that it is mainly a language problem. Having growing up in Hong Kong for the past 30-odd years, I found that previously that this wasn't an issue because English seemed to be the main language through school, maybe even through university. Now, recently, I dare say after '97, it's been a problem that people have started to use Cantonese a lot more and Mandarin. Now, what was important about Hong Kong was its international presence. Now, there has been a really, really large influx of mainland people coming into Hong Kong, so I understand that's a huge issue as well, whereas the ethnic minorities isn't gradually getting that much more people. However, I believe that the government can do something in regards to just spoken and listening Chinese in government jobs that's only needed, whereas do we really need written and a reading Chinese in those jobs? I personally don't think so, and on behalf of the ethnic minorities, I don't think so either. It is a teamwork that what we do in Hong Kong. Now, another point is I believe the government should be taking more initiative to play a proactive role in employing ethnic minority people, as it does seem to be getting less and less. Labour Department, I can't see any. Even in my own job, I've been doing engineering for 10, 15 odd years. I've been in the finance industry, and people I see are predominantly either Chinese, Hong Kong Chinese, or Mandarin. So, there is a large presence, a few 100,000 ethnic minorities in Hong Kong, and I believe they will provide a vital role in getting Hong Kong as an international hub. So I do urge the government to, again, concentrate on the language, educating the ethnic minorities on spoken and listening Cantonese to integrate them into society more. Thank you.
Thanks. International Human Rights Forum representatives.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Asim and I am representing International Human Rights Forum. Today I will share my views regarding employment issue. As we know that EM facing considerable problems in this regard, I think the major problem in this regard is a language barrier. And government should pay more attention in this regard. Due to language barrier, EM members of ethnic minorities facing difficulties in finding jobs. And if you as my sister before mentioned that she's a university graduate and she just got the salon assistant job, and one of my friend, he's also university graduate and he was bachelor in commerce, and he's a driver at the moment. So most of university graduates are working as a construction worker as well here in Hong Kong, because their degrees are not acceptable here in Hong Kong, or the major issue is the language issue. So due to language barrier, they cannot get the proper jobs. So I think government should pay more attention on this issue. And secondly, I want to raise that many EM members would like to start their own business, self-employment. I'm talking about the self-employment. So the government should start some scheme for those who want to be self-employed. And for example, some loan schemes to start their business, or some other kind of training or support to how to start a small-scale business in Hong Kong. So this would also be helpful for to them. And further that in civil service, government should relax the job criteria, especially I don't think so that all the jobs need the high level of fluency in Chinese. Some jobs maybe not. So if job to job, government can relax the criteria in relation with the language, so many ethnic minorities members can have opportunity to get those jobs. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Representative from Pakistan Women Association of Hong Kong.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shazia Gulfreed. I'm General Secretary of Pakistan Women Association of Hong Kong. The association, I'm pleased to address the subject matter to support ethnic minority in relation to employment and integration into the community. We will be bringing forward some problems faced by ethnic minority regarding the issue and seek possible ways to tackle the ever-increasing adversity. Starting off, I would like to arouse the issue of importance of speaking and understanding Cantonese that has on us ethnic minorities for applying job here in Hong Kong. The major difficulties faced are the language barriers that are put between us and the local Chinese. Hence, many of us hesitate to communicate with our associates and even neighbors. Nowadays, finding a job with stable income to support a household is becoming rather difficult due to the requirements based on the language. Also, lots of firms and companies require skilled workers to do the job given, and hence many minorities are left out as they do not have the skill to do it. Even so, the training that are given under English or Cantonese medium, which may not be understandable to them. All of these restricted requirements force them to heavily rely on CSSA in order to fulfill their daily necessities. The outcome is that ethnic families live low-income lives with comparatively low standard of living and having low and stagnant social mobility and social cohesion. We would like to suggest the government to loosen the requirement of local jobs, either it that be language, dressing code, or either things so that more ethnic minorities will have chance to work and help in improving Hong Kong economy. Last but not the least, our Pakistan Women Association is also helping Pakistan women and children by providing various educational activities such as English, Cantonese language classes, talks on health, employment-related programs so that to help them ease any challenges being raised in the society to become independent. However, we hope that such can be done on a larger scale. Also, we request that the government can create more job opportunities for ethnic minorities. All of these will be effective as when more of us start to work. It can help us better integrate into the society. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative from Jammu Kashmir Association.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rehan Gulfreed, and it's my pleasure to present Jammu Kashmir Association of Hong Kong as Vice President. I'm honored to be invited to discuss how to improve the integration of ethnic minorities to integrate into the Hong Kong society. I've completed my studies in UK and decided to come to Hong Kong to settle down. I've always felt that Hong Kong is my home, as my family had lived here for 40 years, over 40 years. Hong Kong is a place of, I believe that Hong Kong is a place of great opportunities for everyone. When I joined the Jammu Kashmir Association, which represents a large part of Pakistani community in Hong Kong, we represent mainly people from Kashmir in Hong Kong. There are about 20,000 people living in Hong Kong from Kashmir. Most of them are uneducated. They cannot read, write Chinese, thus they are in low-paid jobs. Still, whatever they can do, they contribute to the Hong Kong society. Most of the parents I've spoken to, or even myself, I've experienced that I wanted my children to come here to study in the schools. And when I went to find places for them in the schools, most of the Chinese school, I wanted my children to go to Chinese schools, but all the reply I get is like, because your children are from UK, it'll be very difficult for them to understand Chinese, read or write Chinese, so, you rather put your children in international schools. So I was discouraged. That was not my aim. I came here to let my children learn Chinese and integrate into Hong Kong society. And a lot of parents like me, they feel the same. They're feeling the same situation. I believe that it is crucial that migrants take an effective role in the integration process. This is only possible when existing structures are not so rigid as to render agency fertile. Successful integration requires meaningful interaction between migrants and the receiving societies, which means integration must be conceived as a two-way process. Such a process will change not only the migrant's perspective and the way of life, but also effective structure change in the receiving society. In pluralist democracy, such change will not be perceived as a threat to stability, but as part of the flexibility and openness of a society which is constantly developing, striving for greater equality and more opportunity for all people. Democracy is based on the diversity of often conflicting views, needs, values, aspirations, and identities, to which migrants and ethnic minorities add another facet. Thank you.
唔該。基督教服務處陳女士。
Hong Kong Christian Service, Ms. Chen Chung Ho. Chairman, I'm very happy that we are discussing the issue of EM's integration into the community. But there is one thing very important, and that is how do we view EMs? Who are they? Lately, I've read the population policy papers of the government. It seems that the government is regarding them as migrant workers only. But when we talk about integration, we should view them as an important asset of Hong Kong. In the past 2 years, I have been talking about this on different occasions. And I've been talking about EMs, and government officials would tell me that this is not my department's business. It's another department's responsibility. So what is lacking here? I think we lack a comprehensive EM policy in Hong Kong. So that's why the services are so compartmentalized and they are very short term. I think this is not okay. I cited an example just now, and it reflects reflects that there is a lack of communications among different government departments. And in 2010, I think CMAB was very good. It issued an administration guideline, and now 14 government departments, and in the future 22 government departments will issue their own guidelines. But would all the departments just follow these guidelines? Well, now we are in 2014, and this guideline was issued in 2010. But now I still haven't seen any achievement in terms of government departments' work in EM policies. And in 2013, I conducted a questionnaire survey on NGOs. Over 40% of the respondents say that they have never heard that the Social Welfare Department had issued such an administration guideline. I think this is really a pity. I think the SWD has given a lot of funding to NGOs, but it has never encouraged the NGOs to implement the guidelines. And for service providers, they should be gatekeepers. As to whether EMs can really receive services, it depends on the sensibility of the NGOs. However, many of the NGOs are not culturally sensitive. And they say that because they do not speak English or they're too busy, so they are not paying much attention to that. And also, over 40% of the NGO colleagues have never taken any courses in cultural sensitivity. So that's why they do not use interpretation service, because they have never received any training, so they don't even know there's such a service. And it seems that a lot of services are provided to the EMs, but these services are very short-term and they are compartmentalized. And when the government gives funding, it reviews the funding every 2 years. So this is really a hindrance to the development of service. Here in Naitong Community Center, Mr. Daniel Ma, we are a community center. And so I'll be talking more about my community experiences. Well, this is the subcommittee on poverty, but we are talking about different things. We're talking about employment, education, life planning for young people, etc. So all these should involve different government bureaus and departments, but the government does not have a comprehensive policy, so different government departments would have their own measures. But I think, well, we've had a lot of problems faced by the EMs. And if these problems can be resolved, I'm sure many of the EMs would not be living in poverty. And of course, I appreciate the government. It has given fundings to some NGOs so that it can provide services to EMs. But what are the targets and what are the outcomes? We are talking about outcomes, not the outputs. We are not looking at the number of people attending a certain activity. We want to know how many people have been changed by such activities. Now, we have some EM women at our center. They helped us a lot, and they also teach our Chinese members how to speak Urdu. They are very happy because before joining our activities, they didn't know that so many Chinese are interested in them, want to know more about them. But after joining our courses, they are very happy because they know that local people are concerned about them. They are interested in their culture. So this is the outcome. But how about our policy? Do we have target indicators? Our colleagues have been writing proposals. We want different service providers to be more focused. And just now, some other people have mentioned about coordination at community levels. Now, we get fundings from HAB and SWD. But at the same time, I don't think there is enough coordination. So maybe the two departments can be coordinating between themselves more. Actually, each department is doing its own job. So at the community level, can more be done? And just now, some other people mentioned that these projects are very short-term. And how short are they? Last year, at the beginning of the year, in February, March, we asked whether there would be funding for projects. No one gave us any answer. We waited until April. We tried to find our own resources. We applied for other resources. And then in July, suddenly I received a phone call saying that now there are resources available, and we were given the funding in August, and we have to end the project in February. Yes, we got a sum of money. We really want to use the money on the people who are in need, so we really need longer term projects. Thank you. Ms. Zhang Si-wing.
In fact, in Hong Kong, you see that many foreigners have been in Hong Kong for over a decade. They don't speak Chinese, though they can get a job, quite a good job with good salary. In fact, many foreigners who come to Hong Kong to work are not conversant with Chinese. If you have the abilities and qualifications, if you have professional qualifications, even though you don't speak Cantonese, you can still perform very well. The government has done a good job by injecting a lot of resources into this. Labor and Welfare Bureau, ERB, Police, Correctional Services Department, Home Affairs Department, etc., etc. The government has spent a great deal of resources on a lot of departments to assist EMs. However, we always have the feeling that the EMs are only engaged in grassroots jobs. How should we upgrade their skills? That is, not just hiding skills. Accountancy, law, etc., they should try to gain professional qualifications. They speak English. That's their advantage. I understand that many Asians study in schools like Delia. I have friends who like to make friends with Asians. But very often, they only get accompaniment from their peers. So maybe the Asian friends should also be more proactive. Hong Kong is an open city. It's very convenient to surf the internet and to read newspapers. You see, there's this Pakistani host on TV. I think she's a Pakistani, but she speaks very good Cantonese. So I think we need to strive on our own for opportunities. Just now we focused on upgrading their professional qualifications. But in terms of language, through the Home Affairs Department and so forth, the government has already injected a great deal of resources to that end. For the younger generation, well, maybe for the older generations in the 1940s or 1950s, it's not strange that they did not speak Chinese. But for the younger generations, I don't think they have a lot of difficulties in terms of language. Maybe schools shouldn't differentiate between Hong Kong students and students from other races. Representative of the Nepali Union Church.
Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, I'm Raju Baraili from Nepali Union Church as well as Nepalese community. The Nepalese community are in Hong Kong almost 2 decades, and most of the father, they working for the construction, and it's quite well. But nowadays, what happening since 2 decades, their children born in Hong Kong, and many children, they migrate while they are in teenage. They are trying to integrate in Hong Kong. Those children studied in Hong Kong and finished their high school, and they are above 18 years old. And after that, the student went to EME school, English-speaking school, but they didn't have a good opportunity to learn the Cantonese language. Because of that things, nowadays, our next generation, second generation, they confronting the language barrier very severely. So they could not find the proper job. Even they could not enter into the university, And even the vocational training they could not get properly because most of the vocational training is being provided in Cantonese language and some other skillful jobs in Hong Kong. So finally, our children, I mean, the next generation, the young people, they don't see hope in Hong Kong. They don't feel hope in Hong Kong. So because of that reason, many of our Nepalese children, according to the Chinese university statistic, they are abusing drugs because of hopelessness. And they don't see the future in Hong Kong. So if it happen, continue, they are the citizen of Hong Kong. So this would be the quite problem to Nepalese community, to Hong Kong government as well. So because of that reason, how Hong Kong government see this youth and this young generation to integrate with their skillful language in Hong Kong community, that they can have their prosperous life and they can build up quite positive mind in Hong Kong. Thank you very much for this precious time.
Okay, thank you. Poon Wing Lok,
Mr. Poon Wing Lok, thank you, Mr. Chairman and legislative members. In the past 10 odd years or so, I had been in contact with EM youths. They're now very different in terms of community participation. In the past, they're in the construction industry. Now they'd like to become policemen, lawyers, accountants, teachers, or even legislative members. So they don't just want to have very rich meals with a diversified menu. They would like to offer their opinion and input, for example, on the long-term housing strategy. So they'd like to have civic engagement. But this is not easy because there's a structural problem. Education policy, language policy, and public engagement policy all matter. I won't dwell on the details. For the civil service, you must relax the requirement for the Chinese language, particularly in terms of writing. They should get engaged in more job types. As for statutory bodies, we have hundreds of consultative bodies and advisory bodies covering thousands of people. How many are EMs? Maybe some who are engaged in EM affairs are engaged. Even the major businessmen may not be able to reflect the EM views in terms of education, job opportunities, and so forth. And then who are the appointees? How many EM representatives are appointed? And then there must be a proportion, for example, women 30%. Can we also have a ratio of for EM, say at least 6 to 7%? And then for the support services centers offered by the HAD, it's good to have them. But for the existing language classes and social integration programs, they only talk about figures. What about effectiveness? Are they effective enough in terms of civic engagement and integration into society? The year before last, coincidentally, an organization bid for 2 service centers. They had very little experience in relation to EMs, but then they are pro-mainland and pro-establishment. Though every time they offered Ocean Park tickets, Disneyland tickets, or even parking shop tickets, they didn't encourage EMs to become volunteers. So were they helping people to help themselves? Are they helping with community involvement? In the upcoming Quieting Center, if they still rely on these pro-establishment organizations and pro-mainland organizations, then the welfare sector will be infiltrated by these people, and the EMs won't get sufficient help. Labour Party? Well, the Labour Party won't just chant slogans. There must be a sound policy to assist the EMs. The SARG is the biggest employer in Hong Kong. Has it ever done substantive work to assist the EMs? Let me cite 2 examples. This time, the government has provided us with some information. The police employed 15 EMs as community liaison officers. However, all along, the administration has not told us how many EMs are there in the civil service and what's the proportion. And every year, how many EMs the police recruit and how many applicants have been successfully recruited. In fact, many EMs would like to apply for police jobs, but then very often they cannot pass the Chinese paper, so they did not succeed. In September 2011, the Correctional Services Department abolished the written examination for Correctional Services Assistant 2. Eventually, they employed 5 EMs. And then, later in 2011, in replying Mr. Lee Chak-yan's question, the government said that there must be a consistent policy across the police. They must not discriminate against EMs. But then within the police, if you know an ethnic minority language, you're given a competitive edge. So the police has been very rigid in its recruitment policy. The so-called consistency has precisely brought forth unfairness and injustice for certain people. And because of their policy, many EMs have been excluded from the police and the government. In fact, they adopted the approach of traditional enterprises. That is, the more you know, the better. You should work very hard, but at the same time, you shouldn't stand in our way. You shouldn't add to the burden of our enterprise. So how much has the government done? The government should be able to standardize its policy in terms of employment across bureaus and departments. Bureaus and departments should not go their own way. And there must not be different practices in different bureaus and departments. A question. In November last year, when you answered Mr. Cheong Kwak Chi's question, you pointed out that in 2010, 1,234 EMs used the placement services. But then by 2012, only 984. Matching in 2010, 105 successful cases. In 2012, only 61. So where did you spend your money? You must spend your money in the proper way. Next, Hong Kong Human Rights Monitor. Mr. Chairman, Hong Kong is lagging behind in its EM policy. It's a complaint-led policy. The government only support the EMs in certain ways, but not in terms of employment and livelihood. So basically, the government only receives complaints, a few complaints. The government did not urge bureaus and departments and subvented organizations to seriously implement measures to eradicate discrimination. As for administrative guidelines to handle equal opportunities for EMs, you can see that these so-called guidelines do not apply to the whole government. Well, even if a department uses the guidelines, upon the first use, the guidelines would be shelved. Whenever something happens in a particular department, the guidelines do not produce statistics and data to allow us to effectively gauge the effectiveness of government measures and policies. And sometimes very distant cases involving EMs will also be counted. And just recently we heard that there are these people who thought that the government had done a lot of things, but those who are involved in serving the EMs will know that the services provided by the government are not very helpful. The administrative guidelines do not involve the public. There's no independent monitoring. Government departments make use of the guidelines to boast themselves. In the United Kingdom, they have institutions to monitor ministries and departments and local governments to see how they perform annually. In Hong Kong, the EOC does not have sufficient resources and jurisdiction to oversee this. And for the race discrimination ordinance, it's stipulated very clearly that when the government exercises its powers and functions, the government will not be subject to the ordinance. So in fact, the government knows that there are a lot of problems in the government. That's why the ordinance does not apply to it. So please improve on this.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Dr. Muhammad Anwarul Haq from the Pakistani Students Association, Hong Kong. Our mission of PSA is to uplift the educational and socio-economic status of Pakistani youth and community in Hong Kong. It also aims to encourage and promote multicultural society in Hong Kong through organizing seminars on educational, religious, and socio-cultural matters, providing meaningful activities and learning experiences for whole person development, collaborating with the NGOs, schools, and other stakeholders to organize various activities. We also offer information about primary and secondary schools which accept NCCS students, information on higher education opportunities for minorities, and we also provide advice on choosing educational institutions for NCCS students, workshops and seminars on a lot of different issues surrounding education of minorities and general life in Hong Kong. And we also provide recreational activities where we aim to develop leadership, voluntary spirit, teamwork skills, sportsmanship, and interpersonal and intrapersonal skills in minority youth. And we also provide advice to schools, NGOs, and government departments on education and social matters of minorities. So language requirements, in my opinion, is a very complex issue. Government need to make adjustments so that there is positive discrimination, at least for the present generation. The requirements can be tightened to the next generation. Otherwise, quoting one or two examples of ethnic minorities learning Chinese are not good enough. And talking about poverty, actually it's an even more complex issue. The people have been driven out of the jobs because of language barrier and high cost of living. They find it easier to rely on CSSA rather than to work. Also, baseline poverty will have limitations because of our family size. Education opportunities, in my opinion, is the only way forward. It is very serious matter as it may shift the youth to involve in some unhealthy activities. And one thing more that I would like to highlight is that my few suggestions so that we get the authentic data first. Then how many ethnic minorities actually receive CSS? EM students have low motivation. Spark is not there, then except a few students. Successful example of ethnic minority professionals should be highlighted in the media properly. And government should reflect on the amount of understanding of EM premises. I believe you know better the problems than the causes. And to make this happen, the words should make it a reality, and it is always said that the actions speak louder than the words. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Tedda?
Yes. Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Introduction. My group name is Health Awareness Concern Group. Focus in interpretation service of non-Chinese people. Importance of interpretation service for non-Chinese people, language problem. Higher private interpreter is experienced, cannot communicate with doctors, nurse, misunderstanding is happened. Survey, 65% of the participants don't know there is no interpretation service provided by hospital authority. Thus, majority of them have no experience in using this interpretation issue. However, nearly half of them responded report non-difficulty when consulting medical department. Reason, most of them deal with the interpretation problem by asking their friends, relatives or husbands. Suggestion, station interpretation in hospital. Strengthen promotion of interpretation service. Provided leaflets, notice, instruction with different language. Provided interpretation service in clinic under health department. Should arrange female doctor opt for the ideas lady doctor. Important more than doctor other countries. Indian, Pakistan, Nepali, Malaysia, Thailand, other thing doctors take to already government will take care other female ladies, non-Chinese people. Thank you, sir.
唔該。我嘗試簡單總結頭先發言嘅。
I would like to summarize what the speakers have said, and there are 6 major points. I would like the government to answer to these 6 points. Now, language is a very important issue, including written Chinese, spoken English, spoken Cantonese, English, and most of the EMs would find language a barrier in Hong Kong. And even for training courses, it is because many of these courses are not provided in their language, so that's why they cannot receive the trainings. And also for government's frontline workers, because there's no interpretation service, so the EMs do not have access to government services. They need interpreters. They need this kind of service. And also for the government occupation policy, has the government created jobs for EMs? In particular, civil servants, can there be a ratio in government departments so that certain percentage of their jobs must be given to EMs? So they face a lot of difficulties when it comes to employment and education, and many of them cannot get into university, so it's hard for them to find a good job, and they may have to rely on CSS as a result. So this has become one of their biggest problems. So on the whole, we have seen these phenomenon, and the major problem is that the government lacks a comprehensive policy, and there's no coordination among government departments. Many of the programs for them are too short. And many social workers say that for the EM's new generation, well, for the problems we mentioned just now, they are problems mainly faced by older generations. But for younger generations, they want to be part of society. They want to be engaged. They want to express their views. They want to be involved in community work. And some of them even want to be counselors. They want to be part of Hong Kong. And they also ask, well, there is an appointment system in Hong Kong. Well, for EOC, of course, they appoint EMs as their members. However, for many of Hong Kong's advisory bodies, how many of them have appointed EM members? Who's going to answer these questions in these 6 areas? Chairman, with regard to training, maybe I can tell you more about the work of the Employees Retraining Board. Now, many of the speakers talked about language barrier. Now, for the ELMs, they have some language courses which teach languages. And the EMs taking these courses can get a subsidy from the Home Affairs Department. As for other ELB courses, the ELB has specified courses that are taught in English. This can convenience the EMs who do not speak Chinese. And for an EM, if he does not speak English or Chinese, and if there are a number of EMs who would like to take a particular course, they can ask for an interpreter. Yes, we understand that there is a language issue here. So in 2014 and 2015, the ELB will be providing new services. For example, introductory courses for cruise employees or cruise staff. Well, for many of the tourists who are taking cruises to Hong Kong, they would speak English, so the EMs can make use of their language skills. As for interpretation service, our centers normally provide bilingual services. Now, bilingual means English and Chinese. But for some people who do not speak either English or Chinese, we will try to arrange for interpreters. There is telephone interpretation, and if there is a need, we can ask the interpreters to come to our centers. As for our large-scale job fairs, we have asked NGOs to help us. They can help us in interpretation. For example, lately we have asked for the help of 3 EM interpreters so that the EM applicants can talk to the employers. With regard to HAD's work, I can give you some answers. First of all, about interpretation service. We work in accordance with the CMAB's guidelines for promoting racial equality. Each government department should arrange for interpretation service for its service users. And if there is a need, the government departments can ask NGOs for help. For example, the hospital authority has looked at its specialized services, and it has asked for a social enterprise to help him out in terms of interpretation. And also some other NGOs are helping government departments to provide interpretation services. So we are cooperating closely with different government departments and NGOs. We encourage them to provide more interpretation services to EMs. In the past 3 years, our interpretation utilization rate has increased. In the past 3 years, it's increased from 2,360 times to 4,000 times. So this is about telephone interpretation. And also, in the past 3 years, many government departments have increased their provision of services from 460 times to over 700 times. But of course, we will have to promote this kind of service more vigorously to government departments. Maybe my other colleagues would like to supplement. Chairman, in this year's policy address, a number of new issues have been launched for the EMs. In terms of education, there will be more support for EMs to learn Chinese. And also the employment opportunities in the public and private sectors for EMs would also be enhanced. There are a number of measures. For example, if EMs want to apply for government jobs, they would enjoy equal opportunities. As long as job performance can be ensured, the language requirement for certain posts can be relaxed.
The police recruitment guidelines have also been amended in simulating police action. If a candidate is conversant with Chinese or an EM language, additional marks will be given to the candidate. As for community liaison assistants, they are to help with community liaison. For the 14 police regions, there are 15 community liaison assistants in the police. As for correctional services assistant 2, group interview has replaced written Chinese exam. Other discipline services like the Fire Services Department will gradually improve their recruitment arrangements in terms of Chinese proficiency. As for the private sector, the Labor Department has worked very hard to find suitable jobs for the EMs. Just now, job fairs were mentioned. And then training programs in English were also launched. There are also promotional activities to join hands with the trades and industries to offer job fairs to attract more EMs and to attract more EM construction workers to join retraining programs to upgrade their skills. Every year, $200 million have been spent on such initiatives, such that through our concerted effort, our EM friends can play their potentials to the full and integrate genuinely in society. This year, in terms of policies and initiatives, we have made a lot of adjustments and improvement. Just now you focus on translation and interpretation as well as recruitment changes. Under the government's policy, will a certain ratio of EMs be employed? And do you have comprehensive policies to look into this issue? And what about political engagement, political participation? Any EMs appointed? You did not touch upon these. Well, these are not in our portfolios, but I'll try to answer because these involve the overall policies of the government. First of all, the government attaches importance to EM's contribution to Hong Kong's progress. Many EMs have rooted in Hong Kong and they've been in Hong Kong for many generations. This is the first important message. And then individual bureaus and departments, in accordance with their respective policies, will provide services to them. At the senior level of the government, there's also coordination work. In the policy address, there's a leaflet dedicated to EM support services, covering what the government had launched as new initiatives in education, employment, and outreaching community work, as well as senior coordination work in the past few years. So that's how we handled the issue. As I said, for those suggestions that are not covered by our portfolios, we may not be able to provide detailed answers, but I'll relay the messages back to the relevant bureaus and departments. I've summarized the remarks into 6 areas. You did not respond to 3 of them. I would like integration policy, any recruitment proportion for EMs, and then political participation. If you are not able to give us written replies, we can seek further information from other bureaus and departments. Second round, Lee Chok-yan, Priscilla Leung, Fernando Zhang, and Frederick Fong. Lee Chok-yan. Mr. Chairman, we suggested that employment be discussed. Now, if there's no employment, there'll be poverty. And if you want to integrate into society, you must get a job. And then for employment, if you're not given equal opportunities, that will deal a heavy blow to the EMs. So first of all, I'd like to thank them for attending this meeting. We've heard their views. We said we would like to have a comprehensive policy. We must not have makeshift measures. The biggest problem now is that they don't even have makeshift measures. After listening to the government, it seems that the government has done nothing. I only heard one thing new. That is, EMs can work on cruises. I've not heard of other new initiatives, particularly in terms of employment. For the Labour Department, they said they had every service. They asked employers to provide equal opportunities to EMs. But then in actual operations, these are not implemented. On how many cases will an employer call you and register for recruitment? In how many cases will you think of EMs, whether or not they're suitable for the job? Did you ever conduct any analysis when employers approach the Labour Department for recruitment? Do you analyze the jobs offered? What sort of opportunities would be offered to the EMs? If you don't have such analyses, you'll not be sensitive enough. On the one hand, the employers want to recruit employees. On the other hand, the EMs are waiting for jobs. If you don't have a checklist, if you don't have an analysis, you won't tell the employers and encourage them to employ EMs. Well, job fairs can be organized by the employers themselves or the EMs themselves. Let me say one more point. Many EMs told us that before 1997 they were able to apply for police jobs. After 1997, that's no longer possible. If you maintain those job opportunities in the police for the EMs, then the EMs will have more opportunities. Have the EMs performed poorer after 1997? I don't think so. Can you revive the system before 1997? Who will answer this? Mrs. Leung. Mr. Chairman, at the moment, we know that there are quite many vacancies in the job market. Every month, we receive almost 100,000 jobs. So many jobs and many job types. Well, do we tell employers to employ EMs? There are just too many jobs. Some jobs suit EMs, some don't. Rather, we'll look at the EM candidates and their abilities and try to match them with the jobs offered. Maybe our matching efforts have not been very effective. That's why recently we've organized job fairs, large-scale job fairs. Some employers told us that they could recruit EMs, so we accorded priority to EMs in those job fairs. Well, just in March, on the 5th and 6th of March in Mongkok, we organized a job fair. In that job fair, we put up very strong publicity. 179 EMs attended the job fair, quite many of them, and immediate interviews were arranged. 200 of them, and 79 eventually got employed. Of course, some jobs may not suit the EM candidates. According to our follow-up action, 47 EMs actually assumed duty. So these job fairs have been attractive to the EMs. What about the police? Sorry, the police is not within my portfolio, so I'm not in a position to answer. So you cannot tell the difference before and after 1997. Mr. Chairman, here they're apparently relying on job fairs. They've admitted that their matching efforts had not been very successful. Now, if you have 100,000 jobs in hand, why is it that you're unable to get jobs for many EMs through your job fairs? Can you conduct more in-depth studies and provide more in-depth services to them? Can you actually talk to them such that appropriate jobs can be found for them? You mentioned matching. In the Labor Department, there's no matching program. The Labor Department officers automatically called up employers to do matching. We would like to adopt a model to proactively help them fetch jobs. They can surf the internet, but they should know the skills, how to find jobs, and how to attend interviews. So the services provided are individual consultative services. When they come to our department, we talk to them, we tell them about the job market, how to seek jobs. If they tell us their skills, we can tell them what to do. We even have simulated interviews. They can ask for matching. They can surf our internet directly or use our job-seeking terminals. Employers actually receive direct application. Matching is not necessary. Dr. Priscilla.
So happens, I have a number of family friends and also the best friends of my husband and my sons are ethnic minority. Yesterday I had an Indian student coming to my home, sharing the homework, the need to do a homework. And last week my home entertained and also received a guest from Pakistan. So I truly have that kind of feelings that our friends of ethnic minority, they would like to be part of Hong Kong. And you love Hong Kong, and you love a lot of our Chinese culture, Chinese medicine, and you want to learn Chinese things, Chinese food, and you want to have all your Chinese friends to be part of your family. So my experience is that of course, the school that my son was studying has done a good job. I think they treated the students of ethnic minority pretty well. And they actually have a particular class to let them mingle together with the local students so they can have good friends at school. And in my working place, I'm working at the Law School of City University. We have very prominent professors who are also from India and from Sri Lanka. And we also have very, very good working relationship. So how to let this asset of Hong Kong, you are very precious assets, and it still stays in my mind, like a few years ago, we have a Napoleon accidentally killed in Kowloon. I visited Chongqing building many times. It was my district in Tsim Sha Tsui. Always chat with them about what they need. And they share with me that
any
even,
questions?
Yeah.
Please take care of time.
No. Yeah.
Okay.
I will have a remark at the end because I don't think they could answer it. Like even watching movies, you don't have a venue. That's what we heard. The tickets are very, very expensive, like 3 times, like Hong Kong movies. So I think they are, apart from just looking at the job issue, how to mingle together with the local culture is a very important issue in terms of the education area. Now, you mentioned the political participation. This afternoon I chatted with one of my colleagues. We would like to suggest that the future political reform proposal to include some members representing ethnic minority. And I discussed with a number of your groups in these 2 years. We would like to have that suggestion in the nominating committee. Of course, I know that our colleague from the opposition camp, they may not buy the idea of nominating committee. But I personally think that that is a way. And also, you should voice out, and actually you can express this wish to the government. That is one of the way that you can have your representative to speak, and also in the CE election in future, they need to come to your group to get your ideas about what you want, about mingling with the society as well as education and job. So I don't know whether you are willing to be identified as ethnic minority. In fact, that's something I would like to ask you, because I have heard from some of my friends, they don't want to be labeled as ethnic minority. They said, we are Hong Kong people. So I would like to get some of your view, any one of you.
Okay. Anyone want to answer? We can have one. Okay, thank you.
I think nobody wants to be called an ethnic minority or any South Asian.
Speak in English.
Yes, please.
I think we can see something like Labor Department. They talked a lot of things. I personally, and as a leader of the community in my area, I think they have no ever advertisement. I mean, like government office or in the where the people, minority people gathers. They have no any notice or any advertisement pamphlet given to the minority people. So it can, because if you don't know there is some kind of service provided by Labor Department, how can you utilize it? She can have 200,000 jobs, and she can, if she doesn't approach to the minority people, how can she match the job if the for the minority people? That is the one thing. Number two, I think ethnic minority. My father has been living here in Hong Kong since 1969, and I am also living in Hong Kong for last 34 years.
Yeah.
And I speak fluent Chinese, Cantonese. I've been serving the Hong Kong, as a good citizen. I have been doing my best. And if I am still considered as a second-class citizen, I think it is not fair. Because ethnic minority, what do you mean by ethnic minority? For example, I have a question. My children are born in Hong Kong, and they will grow up in Hong Kong. Yeah. They can read and write Chinese. If you still call them ethnic minority people or South Asian, is it fair? Although they got a permanent ID card, established status in their birth certificate, and they are still, because I think this will not do any good for Hong Kong.
Yeah.
As a government, it has the responsibility to deal with this matter very seriously, to get these people in circle, and they have the responsibility, because if you are just treating them as a lower class citizen, they have no confidence. You cannot utilize their abilities in future.
Okay. 主席，頭先李卓人都有7分鐘，我一定要講多少。
Just now, Mr. Yan got 7 minutes, and I have to speak more. I don't need the government to answer me. I just want to say that Mr. Poon Wing Lok criticized that some pro-establishment organizations are now infiltrating into the EM groups. Well, we are talking about harmony here, but you are going against it. I think we should have a united front. I hope he won't criticize, he won't politicize such things. He cannot use the word infiltration. I have to make it very clear. You have been overrunning, so I will have to stop you. 7 minutes are really too long. Well, let me extend the meeting by 15 minutes. We still have 4 members who haven't asked questions yet. Mr. Chang Kwok-chi. Chairman, I really don't know what to say. We do not have a policy for EM's integration. Just now, the assistant director says that there is a pamphlet, but that is not a policy. A policy is not a pamphlet. I have several questions. I know that many NGOs are providing services to EMs. However, most of the money does not come from the government. Why doesn't the government have a longer-term subsidies for community centers and services so that our EM friends can have access to such services? I would like to ask the Labor and Welfare Bureau, in the coming few years, will you have longer-term plans with more fundings? This is question number one. And question number two, the government likes to look at outputs nowadays, but not outcomes. Don't just look at figures. You should look at the outcomes. In the future, if you have more resources, I think you should look at the outcomes, not the output. And thirdly, just now the Labor Department staff said that matching is very difficult, and Mr. Lam Chou-ming said that the success rate of your matching is deteriorating. Have you looked into the reasons? And last question. We want to know more about the EMs, and I think there should be studies. Now we have over 400,000 EMs in Hong Kong. So what are their educational levels? What are their professions? Can we have a better understanding? Just now, the Council of Social Service said that many of them are living under the poverty line. So this is one observation. But how about the general situation of the EMs? Can the government carry out a study so that we can have a better understanding of their situations, and then we can come up with ways to help them integrate? Ms. Fu? Well, for long-term assistance, the HAD has commissioned 6 NGOs to help us, and our service contracts are 2 years long, and every year we will review the situation, we will look at the need, and then we will extend such programs. But as to how many times can these programs be extended, and as to whether there will be a longer-term policy, well, we can think about that. We understand that when it comes to providing services to EMs, we need to gain their confidence. And when they have confidence in you, when they trust you, they will come to our services. And now our contracts are 2 years long. Maybe we can do something so that our planning can be of longer terms. We can think about that. And when we first granted the contracts, we did it through fair, open, and transparent procedures. Different NGOs came to bid for the service contracts. So if there is any change, we need to take this into consideration. In the long run, we will try to look at things in a longer-term manner. Labor Department. First of all, whether we know the general situation of EMs in Hong Kong. In 2011, the Census and Statistics Department conducted a population census, and there was a thematic report on ethnic minorities. There were a lot of data in it concerning Hong Kong's EMs. For example, other than foreign domestic helpers, 65% of the EMs are employed in Hong Kong. And a lot of statistics are provided concerning the EMs from this study. For example, their jobs, where they live, etc. So we have a general understanding of the EMs in Hong Kong, and we know their employment needs. Just now I talked about the referral service. Now, for many of our jobs, no referral is needed. There will be referrals if special requests are made. Well, many of the EMs would look for jobs directly, but we do not know the results. Maybe they have found a job and they didn't inform us. So in 2013, from the second quarter onwards, we have been conducting a survey. Well, we conducted this survey for 3 quarters on 545 people. We have successfully interviewed 348 of them. Half of them have already found jobs, and for the other half, they were still looking for jobs. So we asked this remaining half to come to our office for personalized service so that we can train them for better job searching skills, etc. Dr. Fernando Zhang. Well, EMs are an important group in our society, and they also comprise different people. For example, foreign domestic helpers, foreign laborers, refugees. As for South Asians, when they are compared with other minority groups, they may have their own special needs. So there are different types of EMs in Hong Kong. Well, let us focus on the South Asians in Hong Kong. Lately, the Poverty Commission has published a report. From it, we understand that South Asians are facing the poverty problem more seriously. And how can we help them? Education is very important. Career path is very important. All these are consensus. However, in terms of education, I don't think the government's effort has been quite successful. Today, we are not focusing on education. However, the government says that it really wants to help. For example, when it comes to job matching or civil servants recruitment, the government wants to do more. However, the government cannot give us the relevant figures. Now, in the civil service, including NCSC, that is contract non-civil service staff, or how many of them are EMs, we do not know. It seems that the government does not have the figure. So if we do not have the figure, it's very difficult for us to know whether the government is just full of hot air. So, well, the government try to find out such figures so that we will know whether the government is really taking the lead to recruit more EMs. It is also very difficult for EMs to get public services. Language is a huge barrier. As for the Lady MacLeod Center, they mentioned that not many government departments are using interpretation services. So I hope to hear more from the Lady MacLeod Center, because they help to set up the interpretation service. Now, some government departments are mentioned. For example, the Labor Department, the Home Affairs Department, the Housing Department. As for Labor Department and HAD, they have representatives here, but they are underusing interpretation service. So can Lady McLeod Center tell me more? Can the administration also answer my questions?
Please do not repeat remarks that have been made before. Let me say something about translation and interpretation services first. You've said a lot about that. Individual departments will, in accordance with its portfolios, follow administrative guidelines in the provision of translation and interpretation services, such that EMs can have access to public services. And in our integration centers, the usage rate of services has been rising. The figures have actually doubled for government services. Of course, we should do more promotion so that more services in our departments can be used. Mr. Chan from McLeod Center, Lady McLeod Center, there are two scenarios. Just now you referred to the Labor Department and the Housing Department. Ms. Fu was correct. Yes, the figures rose, the figures doubled, but the base figures are small. In our center, for hospital authority, we had 4,000 to 5,000 T&I sessions. But for other departments, altogether, only 500 per year. I think you start to understand what I mean. For other departments, you can actually count the figures, department by department. The administrative guidelines are good, but frontliners and housing department colleagues don't have EM co-workers. So when EMs are the users, there will be discrepancies between the service providers and the users. Some EM Kaifongs told me that when they approached the Labor Department, they just didn't know what to do. And nobody told them that there are T&I services, so they did not put up a request. So some of the services are seldom made use of, be it the Housing Department or the Labor Department or the Housing Department. If there are EM frontliners, then very naturally EM users will make use of the services, just like what's in the police. One more remark. In those departments, can you display a notice to notify the EM users that where and when necessary, they can request interpretation services? Well, let me say something. We really want to make use of the service. I've tried to understand the issue with my colleagues. They told me when EMs came to seek jobs, they could speak in Cantonese. If they are not conversant with Cantonese, they would be helped by an EM peer who could speak Cantonese. That's why the usage rate of our services is low, because the EMs have friends who can help them. Anyway, I can remind my colleagues to make sure that the services are made more use of. We actually have dedicated counters for EM, so when they come, we can immediately make arrangements for them. Well, it's my turn. Let me tell you my experience first. For the redevelopment of Sook Estate, where there are EM tenants, they don't know Cantonese. They hold plans and drawings without knowing what they're all about. So some of them missed the first offer. So I approached the housing department to tell them that they're discriminating against EMs because some EMs just did not know that there's a deadline for application. It's after some protests that they provided services, support services to the EMs and provide them with English documents. Well, that's so ok. And then Shakib May, and now is the turn of Pak Tin. So, where you protest, they provide the service. Where you don't protest, they don't provide the service. Well, you have to know what you're doing. Councillors are already protesting. You've already got experience with the first redeveloped estate. So when you move on with other estates, you should do the same. In fact, today I'm not happy. We only have staff members from the departments. We don't have policy makers from the departments. And we target the Commission on Poverty, which has already set up a subcommittee to handle EMs. The COP should not just talk about the amount of money spent, whether or not T&I services are required, and so forth. The COP should discuss policy matters. Are EMs a problem in Hong Kong? Well, maybe they should consider doing away with the term ethnic minorities altogether. If you do not face this issue squarely, EMs will still have difficulties. So in terms of the social ladder, we would accord the EMs opportunities to climb up that ladder. And I mentioned 3 areas where you had not handled, but these are important issues. Would you please put them down in writing? We would like the COP to handle them and give us replies. First of all, whether the government will have a policy to set a ratio for recruiting EMs, not just for the police, but for all other departments. Well, just follow the ratio of EMs in the whole population of Hong Kong. If it is 5%, then 5%. And then employment. Schooling affects employment. For EMs, the university entrance rate is only 40% of that of the overall population in Hong Kong. Say if there are 400,000 EMs, how many of them enter university? For the whole student population, how many or what is the percentage getting into university? In the EOC, I mentioned a lot of times that the examination regime is unfair to them at the moment. Is easier said than done. In some housing estates, the EMs speak better Cantonese than many local children. But if you want them to write in Chinese, they have difficulties. Otherwise, they can't go from primary school to secondary school and then universities. Then they won't be able to find an equal job as Hong Kong people. And thirdly, you must have an integration policy. Failing that, you never attach importance to the 400,000 EMs in Hong Kong. You must let Hong Kong people treat them as Hong Kong people. You must also let they themselves feel that they're Hong Kong people. And you must have ancillary policies. Well, I understand that the officials from the 3 departments here may not be able to answer our questions. Our corresponding counterpart should be the COP. Unfortunately, the COP is not represented today. Can you relay our opinion to the COP? Before the COP makes a decision, can they or you come back for another discussion? And of course, the pretext is that you must attach importance to EMs. Who can answer? Anybody relaying the message to the COP? The COP has not sent anybody here. No, not even relaying our views. Oh, then I'm even more disappointed. Well, we can relay your views to them for their consideration. The COP has already got a subcommittee on EMs. There's no reason why that subcommittee has not sent somebody here today, because EMs are talking today. All right, so much for my remarks. No more from me. Mr. Lam Kok Hong, Mr. Chairman, this new SARG has established more departments. Then, committee instead of commitment. They think that by setting up departments, they've done something. So, if you want to do A, they set up a committee A, then that, or they can have a pilot scheme for 3 years, then at least they can stop our remarks and criticisms for 3 years. Well, many of the EMs here are Hong Kong people. Well, look at the refugees. And those refugees seeking political asylum. We have this international social service, which is actually a product of collusion. This ISS. C.Y. Leung's wife is one of the sponsors of that organization. Also, Tam Yu Chung. It has become a mess. We took to the streets 10 times already without solving the problem. What is the problem, Chairman? You're correct. The COP is to deal with us. So they set up a COP. Unfortunately, we followed suit. Now, at this meeting, they sent 3 people who are not from the COP. We are creating difficulties for them. I just want to ask the 3 officials here, are you representing the COP? No? All right. Confirmed? No? Not? They're not representing the COP. So if there's any division of work, they should go back and tell the government what we're saying today. Even the most competent person will lose some of the contents discussed today. A very competent person can only relay 70% of the contents, so 30% is lost. The government should have done something on poverty. It didn't do anything. It set up the COP, and the COP passed the buck back to the government. So the civil service is to handle the monitoring by councillors. It's not the CE and the relevant officials being accountable. They go round and round and round such that nobody will be held accountable. For South Asians, the employment rate is not too bad, but what about poverty rate? All right, they work very hard, but they're poorer than Hong Kong people. So, what should be done? Secondly, medium of instruction in schools. What difficulties do you have? You ask them to learn Chinese. Well, it's difficult to learn Chinese. During recruitment, for South Asians, maybe you should lower the standard. This is just being pragmatic. You prescribe the right cure for the right problem. Well, this has something to do with policies. So what are we going to do here? All right, the 3 officials here. Don't relay my messages to the COP. That will be a waste of time. Well, let me throw objects at them. Very soon they'll come. Chairman, who will come? You are the corresponding counterpart. Well, I don't know. Who's their chairman? They've set up a subcommittee. Well, apart from throwing objects at them, what else can you do? Mrs. Carrie Lam? Oh, no wonder she's so concerned about the throwing of objects, because she knows very well that someday, sometime, objects will be thrown at her. Well, I won't continue. It's a waste of time. Officials, any response? No response is required. It's a waste of time. You don't want them to respond. No. For the deputations here, anyone who would like to speak again? 1 minute per member. 4 members, all right? 4 speakers, 1 minute each. And we'll stop at 6:50. 5, all right? 5 would like to speak. 1 minute each. We are badly overrun. We follow the original sequence. Mr. Lee Ka-shu? Well, you mentioned the training programs for the construction industry. Well, that has actually deviated from reality. We have many South Asian friends who joined the training programs of CETA. Previously, there were many English programs. Now only one has remained. And so they told me that very often they had to guess the examination questions. So they had to sit for the examination twice or thrice before succeeding. So can the CIC organize English training programs again? It is impossible for them to pass exams first before they seek jobs. The poverty rate will be very high then. I agree with Mr. Frederick Fong. The poverty rate is above 60%. There were questions about translation and interpretation services. Chairman, in 2013, in November, the LegCo asked a question for telephone interpretation services. From 2012 to 2013, 3,000 odd are telephone interpretation calls. The government used only 300 odd of those calls. That means the government is only 10% of the users. So this 10% usage rate is rather low. For on-site interpretation telephone services, we need 7,000 calls. Why did we only have 500 on-site calls? It's because such on-site calls could only be provided by the government. Well, the EMs understand that there are services, but it's the staff member on duty who is to assess whether there is a need. Whether as a medical consultation or a placement interview with the Labor Department, if the staff member on duty considers that there's no need, then no service will be provided. And then they shouldn't be charged a fee first before getting the service.
For protection claimants, there's been a fair amount of criticism, and you could look at, whether policy or implementation. I think that it's understood that there are clearly areas of improvement in terms of budgeting, accountability, objective criteria to determine the assistance rates. Actually, the contract for the next service package period will begin this year, and I hope that the government will take into consideration many recommendations, solutions-focused recommendations that the Refugee Concern Network made, of which Justice Center Hong Kong is a member. I think that the issue, though, is that we need to look a little bit deeper than that, and this is why I wanted to focus on this issue of permission to work. It would be fair for protection claimants, but it will also even reduce a lot of these problems that we're seeing with the assistance package. It would potentially allow these people to benefit the economy, to be part of the tax base, and I think that's something we should consider.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sarah?
Yes, in view of such a low employment rate, we requested Labor Department before to make a special division for EM, but that time they rejected us. They said that they don't think that it is needed to make a special division for EM, which should provide job matching service, especially for EM, so that they should not face difficulties when they approach Labor Department. The thing is that if Labor Department is not agree to fulfill their duties, I think it is better that government should provide funding to different NGOs who can provide job matching service to EMs more actively. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. 陳清華生。
唔該，主席，我真係好聽。
I've heard the Labor Department's remarks. They say that at the Mong Kok job fair, there were on-site interpreters. I'm really touched because at Tsuen Wan and Sha Tin, there were several job fairs, and I haven't seen any on-site interpreters. So in the future, will we always have on-site interpreters? Because in the past fairs, I haven't seen them. And you sometimes ask the applicants to bring their own interpreters. So after saying this, in the future, you will always provide South Asian interpreters on site at the job fairs. If you can do that, that's very good. And you say that the EMs will bring their own interpreters. They will bring their own relatives so that the relatives can act as their interpreters. But many of them cannot do that, and you just expect them to bring their relatives, and they say that your colleagues have not taken the initiative to offer help to them. Do you believe that there are only 300 requests from all of them? Do you think that's the real figure? So will you consider employing South Asians to help the EMs to find jobs? I think there have been a lot of complaints already. So we should come up with solutions. We should come up with options. I think each office should employ at least one EM staff. Well, EMs are also Hong Kong people, so all government departments should have EM staff. And many communication problems can be resolved if the government departments have EM staff. And the biggest problem for EMs now is housing, because rental is too high in Hong Kong and EMs don't make a lot of money. So are they going to spend their salary on rents or on food? It is a very big problem for them. I think this is the priority issue that the government should tackle. Well, we always have to pay rents, otherwise we will be kicked out of our homes and we will become victims, and the children will suffer. And even school fees cannot be paid. And the EMs cannot save money so that they cannot fly home to visit their families and relatives at home. Let me extend the meeting to 7 p.m. Mr. Lee Cheuk-yan, please confine your speech to 1 to 2 minutes. Just now, somebody mentioned that the Labor Department should set up a special unit for EMs employment. I've heard from the Labor Department that they have this kind of service. So when you listen to the bureaucrats, it seems that you have to find your way in a maze. They say that they provide personalized service, personalized referral service. So where does the problem lie? I think nobody knows they provide such a service. So can I ask Mr. Sloan? So can we ask the EMs to do that when they go to your office and they raise their hand saying that they want a personalized referral service? You will provide that to them because you have not publicized that service, so nobody knows about it. So what is this personalized referral thing? How does it operate? Nobody would ask for that because they don't know about it. And can you also answer the deputations? Well, once they come into the office and they raise your hand saying that they want such a service, you will provide a service to them. Do you have such resources? Labor Department? Mr. Sloan? Maybe I can explain. Yeah, please be brief. I just have 6 minutes left. Now for interpretation service, so if it's a large-scale job fair, we will arrange for on-site interpreters. But if it's just a general or smaller-scale fair that is district fair, then we will make use of the phone interpretation service provided by Hong Kong Unison. Now, we have 12 job centers. We will be setting up the 13th one at Tung Chung. So the job centers will be liaising with the employers in the districts, and it will work hand in hand with the NGOs in that district. It will help the EMs to find jobs, and through the NGOs, EMs will be contacted so that they can come to receive our service. We think this is more efficient because if we set up a special division for the MEs, it may not be able to cater for the needs of each and every district. As for the personalized service, it's provided in every center. Any person who's in need is not only confined to EMs, can make use of that. So when EMs come to our centers, our colleagues will recommend this service to them. So there's no problem with this service. It can always be arranged. HAD, I would like to supplement. Now for the interpretation service, for an EM user is free. When departments use that service, we will charge the department. And we will enhance the publicity so that the frontline staff would know about this scheme, and it will use the interpreters more. And in the coming year, other than new support service centers and other new services, the HAD will also employ more EMs, and in our plan we will be hiring 5 contract staff members, and we will join hands with NGOs in the coming year. Full-time EM staff will be increased from 65 to 95. This is full-timer. As for part-timer, it will increase from 50 odd to more than 80. But you cannot have a policy saying that a certain percentage of the employees must be EMs. Well, we do this in accordance with our work requirements. Is there anything to supplement? With regard to training, just now I mentioned the ELB service, but I would like to add a point. Now for the ELB, it also wants to understand the needs of the EMs. It has set up a focus group comprising representatives from EM groups and NGO representatives. So if EMs want to say anything about training, they can tell the focus group, and views will be reflected to the ELB. 1 minute. No time for reply, but you can speak. I would like to respond to the member's question. Disappointed that the government's not replying to the issue of non-transparency. Now, for service speeding, is it fair and open? I'm talking about the district, the EM network, etc. This is not my personal view. This is the view of many social workers. So an NGO, if it only has half a year's experience, how can it bid for 2 service centers successfully? And I haven't seen any good services provided by it. It seems that even transfer of interest is involved. So I hope that the bidding for service centers will be more closely monitored in the future. Well, the government always go through fair, just, and transparent procedures. There is an interdepartmental committee overlooking this. So we have a basket of factors to be considered when we do the bidding. And we also monitor the service quality. So you should look at the actual work of these groups. So please give us the relevant information in writing so that we would know it clearly. Okay, I think we are overrunning. And we have mentioned several major issues faced by the EMs, and we do not have representatives from the COP here. I'm very disappointed in that. But we will follow up on these issues. and we will meet again. We will invite COP members to come, in particular the relevant government officials. So for the EM groups, please don't be so disappointed. We will follow up on these issues with the governments for you. We will continue to help. So if you want to provide us more information, please give them to the Secretariat. Thank you.